Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to or welcome back to my verbal journal. I'm Maci, your host, and I'm so excited for today's episode. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Cassidy Storts, and she is a registered dietitian at Doherty Nutrition in Fort Worth, Texas. She is absolutely incredible. I know you guys are going to love her just as much as I do, and I know you guys are going to love this conversation. So without further ado, let's introduce Cassidy and get into the episode. Okay, welcome back to my verbal journal. I'm super excited to have a super special guest today, Cassidy Storts, who is a registered dietitian that I've been working with. And yeah, so Cassidy, why don't you introduce yourself? Just tell everyone where you work, a little bit about yourself, and yeah.
Yeah, well, my name is Cassidy, like Maci said. I'm a registered dietitian. I live in the Fort Worth area, so I work at a practice called Doherty Nutrition, and we're a pretty big private practice in the area, in the DFW area. We do one-on-one nutrition counseling, and we have a lot of different specialties, such as general health and wellness, sports nutrition, eating disorders, women's health and hormones, diabetes, fatty liver, all those things. So I kind of see all of the above.
Awesome. Okay, so before we get into the episode, we're going to start off with our usual segments where we share something that we've been loving lately and then an unpopular opinion that we have. So, something I've been loving lately is dark nail colors. I feel like are really in right now with the fall. I got navy blue. I've been seeing people get like brown and dark red, and so yeah, I'm into that. Normally I'm like a light pink girl, but I feel like in the fall, the dark is really, I don't know, it's really in right now. And I also have been loving the Catalina Crunch pumpkin spice cereal. It's super good, also high in protein. So that's been really good lately. What about you?
Amazing. I haven't tried any of the Catalina Crunch stuff, but
They're good. I actually really like them.
Okay, I'll have to try it. I love the dark nail colors. I'm with you though. I feel like I always do like the light pinks, and I never really branch out into the darker side of things. This is very cliche, but I love all the pumpkin stuff. I'm such a fall girl, so all the pumpkin stuff just makes me so happy. Like I had a pumpkin cold brew from Starbucks this morning, and then I plan to go to Trader Joe's and stock up on all of their fall seasonal items.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's just my obsession.
I will order groceries because I know if I go into the store, then I'm going to end up spending way more money. I'm like, the few extra dollars I'm spending on getting it delivered is actually going to save me money in the long term because
it does. No, 100%. Yes, especially in Trader Joe's. I feel like you never, like, you can have a list when you go, but then you see all these different items that just look so good. So, you end up spending way more than you anticipated.
They do a really good job with their marketing. Like, the way their store layout is and the way that they have everything set up, like, it's just so well thought out. But I'm with you on the pumpkin stuff. I actually just posted on my Instagram a recipe for pumpkin cheesecake ninja creamy recipe. It's like a high protein ice cream. So you guys can all go check that out if you have a ninja creamy.
I need to get the ninja creamy.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Actually might be on sale right now for like Prime Day. I feel like they extended it. But
yeah,
I definitely feel like it's worth it. But it's just so loud. Like that's the thing, is it's so loud. Like, it's so embarrassing. My roommate's like, it's so loud that if I'm making one while I'm at school, I have to plug it in on our deck outside and just, like, blend it out there because I'm like, it is so loud. Like, people outside are probably like, what is that noise? Like, sometimes people will be walking, it'll be like a Saturday night and people are like out late and I'm like making my ninja creamy on the deck and people walk by and I'm like, oh god, this is so embarrassing.
Wait, is it louder than a blender? Like when you blend a smoothie? Okay.
I'd say it's a little bit louder or like about the same, but it's just like longer time period because you have to like put it in and then you like respin it, so it just has to go through cycles and then you add the mix-ins, so it's not just like a quick like blend a smoothie. It's like a little process, but it's all part of the fun, and I don't care. People can see me on my deck. It's worth it. Okay. With that, now we can share an unpopular opinion. I feel like this is gonna get me a lot of hate, but I don't see the hype with Taylor Swift. I get the hype, but her music's just not for me. Like, no, I just feel like it's all the same.
I'm with you. I've never been Swiftie.
Yeah, I just don't get like I people pay so much to go to those concerts and I'm like low key I feel like all of her songs kind of sound the same to me. Like they I don't know. I just don't really see the hype.
No, I totally agree. I feel like her earlier stuff, like, Teardrops on My Guitar, like that was
Yeah,
good. But now I don't know. I just don't love her music.
neither do I. And like I don't know, other female artists like I really like SZA and like Rihanna and I like Beyonce. Like I feel like their music's all different. Like it stands out more. Even
Mm.
Billie Eilish. I don't know. I have nothing against her. I would definitely never pay that much money to go see her in concert. That's absurd.
Yeah, it's like a mortgage.
No, okay, what's an unpopular opinion that you have?
Okay, I was thinking about this. I feel like okay, this is not, I mean, I feel like this is controversial depending on who you talk to. I love pineapple on pizza. I know that some people just think that's atrocious. I think it's so good. So I feel like that's just the only thing I
Okay.
could think of. I was like
See,
relating to food.
I don't mind pineapple on pizza. I don't really like when it's not the pineapple or the flavor, it's like the fact that it's hot. I don't know. I feel like that's what rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, that is true. Like warm pineapple's a little weird. I don't know. The sweet and
Yeah.
salty just does something for me.
No, I
So,
do like the sweet and salty mixture though. I can see that. I actually my friend taught me how to pick a good pineapple the other day and I like got one from the store and it was the best pineapple I've ever had. It was
what's the
so good.
secret?
So it actually needs to be more green than yellow. And if you smell it, it should smell sweet, like a pineapple. You smell them and they just smell like nothing. So yeah, if you like pineapple, that's a good tip.
Yeah, I didn't know about the color. I did, like, whenever I was little, my mom would always smell the pineapples, so that's something I do too, but I didn't know that was
Yeah.
an actual thing that you could do. So,
Yeah. And like with watermelon, you're supposed to like knock on it and if it sounds hollow, that means that it's good, which is super
interesting.
weird. Yeah, and like the heavier the watermelon is, the better apparently. So,
Okay, I'll have to test this out with the next watermelon I get.
yeah. Yeah, definitely test it out. Let me know. Okay, so now we can kind of get into the bulk of the episode. So, why don't we just start with where you're from and where you went to school and kind of your path to becoming a registered dietitian?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I mentioned I am from Fort Worth. So I did my undergrad at TW, Texas Women's University in Denton. So I got my degree, my undergraduate, I have a bachelor's in nutrition science with an emphasis in dietetics. And then I went on to do my dietetic internship with a company called Wellness Workdays, sat for my RD exam, and then, a couple months later started working at Doherty.
Nice. And how long have you been there?
So I started at Doherty last July, so it's been a
Okay.
little over a year now.
Okay, nice. And then what kind of made you want to get in, how'd you like choose which career path to go down? Like, because I know with dietetics, you can obviously go into clinical, counseling, like there's so many different avenues. Did you always want to go into counseling or kind of how'd you fall into that?
That's such a good question. Yeah, I feel like whenever I first got into nutrition, I kind of went back and forth, because there are so many areas, like you mentioned, like collegiate or clinical. But I think whenever I started working and interning for like a private practice dietitian, I really loved what she was able to do and just have like the one-on-one and ongoing relationships with her clients. So that's what really attracted me to private practice and nutrition counseling was just being able to have like ongoing relationships with clients, being able to help support them in their goals and not just see them, one and done. But we get to spend like an hour
Yeah.
together, which is great.
No, I agree with that because sometimes in clinical, patients are in and out of hospitals so fast that you can give them a plan, but there sometimes really isn't a follow-up or like you don't really know if they took the advice or if you actually like made an impact. So like I feel like with counseling, you can really see the impact you're making, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, like sometimes, I mean, like clinically, like sometimes they don't want to listen to, like they might be hurting, they might be in pain, like just had surgery, and it's not, sometimes it's not the time or the place for them to want to hear about those things. So I think it's good, for them to have that exposure there, and then be able to have, sessions where we reinforce some of those ideas, or just like help them on cooking or recipes, whatever they need support with.
Right? Like if they just get a diagnosis and then you're telling them to eat more vegetables, they're like, well, that's kind of the last of my priorities right now. Like, thanks, but no thanks. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I actually had this conversation with a client earlier, and she was telling me that, like her doctor had recommended that she follow a heart healthy diet. And she's like, but I don't know what a heart healthy diet means. So I think it's great to be
Yeah.
able to dive a little bit deeper into sessions and explain what that can look like in their day to day.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I have also I am not 100% sure what I want to do yet. Something with sports dietetics and private practice. So, but yeah. So that's awesome. What advice do you have for people who are kind of on the path to becoming a registered dietitian in college right now?
I feel like I have a lot of ways I could go with this. I think this might be like non-traditional advice. I would say just rest because I think there's like a lot of pressure to do all the things and always be studying, always be staying like up to date with the latest research, which obviously is really important, but I think like with healthcare and too like with our profession specifically, I feel like there's such a high rate of burnout because not only is this our job, but it's also our passion. Like we love it. So we obviously are going to spend a lot of our free time researching or listening to podcasts or reading books on nutrition. So I think like just resting and finding other hobbies that aren't nutrition related. So for me, like one thing that I've had to start doing is getting back into fiction books instead of reading nutrition books all the time.
Yeah.
Even though I love reading nutrition books, but I think I realized like, okay, it's really good for me to have this separation because then I come back and I get more excited about the research and about newer things that I learn when I give myself that space to just decompress and do other things, honestly.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. I also need to take that advice. But what fiction books have you been into lately?
Ooh, okay, so I love suspense. I love thrillers. I've been
Okay.
reading all of like the Frida McFadden books. Have you read those?
No, I haven't.
Those are
I've
good.
heard I've heard people talk about them though, so
Yeah,
I'll
I
have to
like
check
them
it out.
because like they're honestly not a long read, which is what I like about them. And they have a good plot twist. So
Okay, I like
that's what I'm
that.
there for. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yes. Maybe another one of my hot takes is I have read a couple of Colleen Hoover's books and I just don't like them. Like
I
I'm not a
agree.
big
I
fan.
agree. Did you see the movie? Did you
I
see
did
the
not
movie?
because I heard it was not good.
Okay, I read like half of the book and I was just like not really into it. Like it wasn't bad, but like I didn't really feel like it was worth my time to read it. So I didn't really know what happened. So I was like, "Oh, I'll just go to the movie just I only got halfway through the book, like I just want to see how it ends." The costuming was really interesting. I don't know if you saw clips, but like Blake Lively is such a queen and I just feel like they did her so dirty.
Yeah, I saw like some of the clips on social media of the thing of like the outfits that she was in, and I was like, huh, I don't know. I guess like when I was reading the book, I pictured different things,
Me
but
too. Yeah, I didn't really picture her like that. I
yeah.
don't know. It was a decent movie. I also just don't like movies, which I've shared on the podcast before, that I
Yeah,
like TV shows and not movies.
I have a hard time sitting through movies.
Me too.
I think maybe my attention span is not there, but they're just so
Yeah.
long.
I don't know. There's not enough time for the plot to develop. I don't know.
Hmm.
And then it's over. And then it's either you regret watching it because it was bad, or you're like, okay, it's over. Like, now what? And then they try to make a second movie and it's never as good.
Hmm.
I don't
No,
know.
I totally agree. These are all hot takes. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. We're getting off topic, but it's okay. It's okay. Okay, so have you ever like in the past struggled with your own relationship with food? And if so, like how was that journey kind of for you?
Yes, yeah, I feel like that's kind of what brought me into nutrition and into dietetics. And I feel like that's the same story with a lot of other dietitians. It's like
Yeah.
we usually get into it because maybe we had a poor relationship with food, or we just had like some other personal health conditions that we needed to do our own research for, or we saw a dietitian. So I feel like a lot of us do have that personal experience. But yes, I did when I was in high school. I struggled a lot with disordered eating, had a really bad relationship with food and with exercise, which I feel like stems from just like my type A personality. I love to be in control, love to be a perfectionist. So I think I channeled that with food in a way, which, like, spoiler alert, you can't be perfect when it comes to food. There's not a perfect way of eating, no
Yeah.
matter how hard we're gonna try. I feel like what helped me was honestly just getting more into my education. Like the more that I learned about food, the more that I realized I had all these misconceptions and I had like all these maybe bad ideas that I heard from social media or from friends or family members that just weren't accurate. And I mentioned that I had interned with a dietitian when I was an undergrad, and I worked with her for a couple of years, just like helping out in her practice. And she was like my first exposure to like the intuitive eating framework, health at every size. So I think that was really eye-opening too, just to know like, hey, there's something else, like there's a whole world in nutrition outside of, weight loss, weight management. Like we can also, help people with their relationship with food.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the same for me, especially, well, so since I was a college athlete before I got into studying nutrition and dietetics, and I was a finance major, and I just saw so many athletes, like, especially female athletes. There was like this conception that, oh, you can eat whatever you want because you're an athlete, but then there's also this conception that, oh, you need to eat less, like, you're eating too much. You're a girl, like, you should only be eating this many calories, like, oh my gosh, you're going in for seconds. Like, there was just this, like, such this gap, and it also just impacts your performance as an athlete so much, and you're already under so much stress as a student athlete, and then when you're under fueling, like your your brain's not in the right place, you're more prone to injuries, like all of that stuff. And your body composition just changes so much even without changing your nutrition just throughout the year, because you have off season where you're obviously not training as much, and then you have like summer training, and then going into the season you're doing a ton of cardio, like you're really ramping up your training. And so there's already these body changes, and people would talk about like my jeans aren't fitting right, like and so there's just, it's always in the back of your head, I think, especially for females. And so I think that kind of really started to get to me, and I was like, didn't I wasn't very educated in terms of nutrition, so I was just kind of listening to the things people say on the media. Oh, you need to cut down on carbs. Oh, blah blah blah. And then that's when I started. Well, I'd already been experiencing like gut health issues and stuff like that, and then I was under fueling, and then I ended up transferring and getting into nutrition. I think learning about it really has helped me like over start to overcome that in a way. And then obviously working with you has been super helpful. But I feel like it's just always, especially for females, in the back of your mind, like just this pressure to always be eating less, and it's not what you should be doing, and you don't realize the effects that it's having on your metabolism and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think a lot of registered dietitians are very type A.
Yes, it's like a running joke, I feel like.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's also hard, like with athletes. Like I didn't play in college or anything like that, but like growing up, I was definitely an athlete, and I think like stepping away from that was kind of what maybe propelled some of that disordered eating, because I was maybe like seeking my identity and like, hey, like for such a long time I was an athlete, and now that I'm not, like what am I gonna do? Like what's gonna be my identity? So that's what I see too, like with a lot of people who have maybe like retired from collegiate athletics or something, like we're just, we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that definitely, I experienced that when I quit college soccer and wanted to transfer. I was like, well, I was burning this many calories a day practicing, so now what am I going to do? Like, oh my God, I'm going to gain so much weight. Like, I need to be training and exercising more. So I started like running a ton and lifting, but I was just overdoing it so much. And like, I loved doing it. Like, I would feel so good afterwards, but eventually it was too much. And like, I could feel myself just getting weaker and weaker. And eventually I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this to myself. Like, I'm not helping myself. And it's like this weird thing too, because it's like, all of the rest of society is like, wow, you're so disciplined. How do you exercise that much? Like, I can barely get to the gym 3 times a week. And so it's like other people are like fueling your disorder in a way.
Yep. Yes. Yes, 100%. Yeah. I was gonna say something about that, but I just lost my train of thought. But no, I totally agree. I feel like yeah, there is like that fueling of kind of being praised for that disordered eating, and other people don't really see what's going on. You're like, okay, thanks. I'm just gonna continue down this road now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, I feel like sometimes we kind of have to hit, like, they call it diet rock bottom. We kind of have to have that rock bottom for us to realize, like, hey, these behaviors aren't helping us. We feel terrible all the time. Like, end up having hormonal issues. Maybe, like, our hair is falling out. Like, we end up having all of these other complications as a result of underfueling. So then we kind of have no other option except to go the opposite direction, and then we end up
Right.
feeling so much better.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And then how do you talk to clients? Like, do some clients track? Do some clients use intuitive eating better? Like, how do you feel about that? Because I know some people are like, oh, tracking is toxic. And then some people are like, oh, no, you need to track to make progress. So how do you kind of bridge that gap?
It's really hard, honestly. I think it's just like kind of using discretion with each client and like knowing their tendencies, like knowing their personalities, which is another thing I like about the outpatient counseling. You can kind of know their personalities a little bit more and hey, like what's going on here. I kind of know based off of previous experiences, like this might be a trigger for you. Yeah, I think it really comes down to the client. I always tell clients like as long as it's not a trigger for you to become obsessive, it can be a good tool, for us to see, are we getting enough fiber? How's our protein? Especially for those that do want to hit more specific goals in terms of like muscle mass or whatever, but it's definitely going to be client to client. Usually with my clients that do, we do want to work on relationship with food, I usually don't have them track and just, take a break. Maybe we try weaning ourselves off of those tracking apps, going cold turkey if we can. Because my ultimate goal for clients is I want them to be just connected to their body and that we're not relying on an external source to tell us like how much we should be eating, but just really relying on, okay, this is what I feel confident doing with my body, what works best for me. So I think it can be a good tool. I would never say it's, long term. I think I always try to use it in smaller doses. So it just can be very quickly, we can kind of spiral and take it a little bit further.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I definitely don't think it's something that should be long term. I know in my own personal experience, I was definitely under eating and not realizing it. So then tracking for me was kind of helpful because if I didn't track, then I would like be constantly overthinking if I would end up eating less than what I needed to. But if I tracked, it was like, okay, I know how much isn't like, I know I'm getting enough. Oh, I need to eat more, in a sense, because I'm also just trying to get my period back and all of that stuff. So I know I need to be in a surplus, so tracking right now for me is helpful, but I know it can also be tedious and can get to a point where it's too much control and yeah, can become
No, I like
toxic.
that you bring that up about like making sure that you're eating enough. Like it can be a good tool for that. And I think that some clients really like to have those parameters. Like they might be a little bit more type A like us.
Yeah.
They like to have those parameters and say, okay, I know I need to at least, eat this much. So I do think that's when it comes into being a really good tool also.
Yeah. For sure. And then what do you find is the biggest misconception that your clients have about food?
That's a good one.
Or like just some common ones, doesn't have to be like one.
I have a couple that are on the top of my mind. I think like one common misconception is that food has to be like super complicated. And that maybe we have to eliminate a lot of foods in order to be healthy, or we have to do like mental gymnastics with all these different food rules that we have in order to be healthy. So oftentimes I end up like working with clients on adding more food in as opposed to taking it away, which they're usually surprised by that approach. But yeah, I think that it's a lot more simple than, a lot of us think it is, especially from things that we hear on social media too. Like I think there's just so much confusion. So I love to just work with clients on simplifying nutrition with what's going to work best for them.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it gets really overcomplicated and people when they see that, it's like just deters them from even looking into it more. When in reality it is fairly simple like once you break it down. And yeah, I like the add-in method more than like people don't realize it's not like cutting out certain food groups or anything like that. Like there's always stuff to add in. Like I know when I started cooking and all of that, like my parents were like, you're gonna eat that whole thing? Like that's a huge bowl. And I'm like, okay, this bowl, yeah, it's big. It has so much. There's a lot of ingredients, like so many different colors going on. But this is the same amount of calories that's in like half of that cheeseburger. And like people don't realize once you start eating whole food, you can eat so much more. And that was really eye-opening for me when I started getting into nutrition. And I think that also it made it hard for me in a way because people were like commenting. When people comment on what you're eating and how much you're eating, it can be really triggering. So like I even had to set a boundary with my parents. Like they would be like, oh, we're having dinner in 2 hours. Like, you're gonna, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be hungry for dinner. Like, I'm not gonna spoil my dinner. Like, so setting that boundary of like just having the people in your life not comment on what you're eating because it can be, I don't know, at least that was a trigger for me, and I know it can be for a lot of people. So,
Yeah, and I love that you set boundaries. I think that's something too, like that's great to talk about. Is like if you need to set boundaries around those people, do it. Like food comments can be really, really triggering. Food, body comments, those can be really hard to deal with. So yeah, I think that's awesome that you're able to set boundaries. And yeah, I always think, I don't know if you've seen these like videos on like Instagram or TikTok, but it's like they'll kind of be making fun of some of the nutrition trends or like just like conflicting information that they see. And it was like this guy, and he was like gonna eat some eggs for breakfast, and he was like, oh, can't eat eggs because they're bad for my cholesterol. And then he like moves on to oatmeal, and it's like, oh, well, can't eat oatmeal now because apparently like oatmeal's bad now. And then he was like gonna eat some, like, I don't know what it was, like some fruit. And then it was this video of this guy saying, oh no, like fruit and vegetables are bad for you. So he's like, Kate, can't have this. And then he's like, let me just have some water then. And then there's a video of someone saying that we need to stop drinking water altogether.
I think I saw a video like that.
So, and I mean, it's so hard because I think, right, like we have to go through so much education to know the things that we know. Like we have to go through so many classes, clinical practice, like continuing education. So if it's like confusing for us sometimes, I can only imagine like how hard it is for people that don't have nutrition knowledge or that education to navigate some of
Yeah.
those, just like the world of social media, the internet. It's crazy out there.
And I think people don't realize the difference between being a registered dietitian and being a nutritionist and getting a certification online.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Because
Yes.
people are like, oh, this nutritionist on TikTok said this. It's like, okay, they did a certification through NASM, and now they are calling themselves there's a difference between a registered dietitian and a nutritionist, and people don't understand.
Yes, or like I'm a gut health expert or, health coach.
Yeah.
Like, those are great, but they're very different.
Yes, they're all very different. There's a lot of different education, like a lot of different education that goes into each thing, so it's important to just check your sources always.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah. So that's definitely been something. Okay, let's kind of talk about what are your goals moving forward in your career or just in life. I know you're married. Do you want to have kids? Like, what's that kind of looking
Yeah,
like?
for sure. We would love to have kids. We have a dog right now. She's back here napping, so she's
Oh.
a child right now. But in terms of career, let's see here. Well, I love learning. So I would love to just learn more about certain specific areas, be able to specialize eventually. Right now, I'm loving like women's health and hormones, like functional nutrition. That's been really
Yeah.
fascinating. I think especially because it's not something that we really learn in our undergrad. We do definitely like more clinical and food service oriented things. So I think getting to learn about the functional world is really exciting because it's very different. So would love to pursue like advanced certifications in that realm.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super into the hormone, all of that stuff, especially since getting off birth control and just trying to navigate getting my cycle back to normal and stuff like that. The book you recommended me was also really good. What was it called? What was it called again?
Is it Lacey's book, The Women's
Yeah,
Guide to
Lacey
Hormonal
Dunn.
Harmony?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, I think every woman should read that book. I think it's so
yes.
great because we're not taught about like how our hormones work, how our cycle works, how nutrition can
No.
apply to these things. It's so good.
Yeah, I will link that book in the show notes for all of you guys to go check out. But speaking of on the hormonal piece and everything like that, do you have a lot of clients that come to you? Are they on birth control, or like how does that kind of affect their nutrition or mask certain things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I see a lot of clients with PCOS. I feel like that's a really prevalent, condition. Well, that is the most common hormonal or endocrine disorder worldwide, which is crazy. So I do have a lot of clients that have PCOS. and a lot of them are on birth control just because it does kind of help cover up those symptoms as far as
Yeah.
like the elevated testosterone and androgens. So it can kind of help keep those things at bay and the irregular cycles. So I do have a lot of clients that are on a variety of, forms of birth control.
Okay. What advice would you have nutritionally for people with PCOS? Just general advice.
Ooh, that's a hard one. I would say definitely considering, well, so there's a couple different types of PCOS. So kind of depends on, the specifics, but generally there is like some inflammation going on. So definitely incorporating some anti-inflammatory food components as far as like fatty fish, heart healthy oils like our avocado oil, olive oil, adequate protein, fiber, those types of things. Supplementation if necessary as well. Stress management is huge. Blood sugar balancing if we need to. A lot of women with PCOS do have insulin resistance, so that's going to be really important. It's usually kind of a combination of blood sugar balancing, anti-inflammatory foods, supplementation, stress management, and sleep support is also a really big one. It's kind of like a holistic approach.
It's yeah. No, I love that functional medicine and like holistic health is kind of being integrated into so many other avenues, especially nutrition, because I think that can be so helpful. Because even nutrition is relatively like a new science, and so we're just constantly learning. And the more research that goes into female hormones and female health, because just in the past, everything in nutrition and fitness and everything is just the research has been done on men. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of the shifts that come as more research is actually done on women.
We are left out of so many research studies.
Yeah, for sure. And like I didn't even realize it until you have to look at the details of the study and you're like, "Oh, wait. Okay."
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, especially like with intermittent fasting. Like a lot of those studies have been done on men. And I mean, there might be some that have been done on women more recently. I just haven't looked into them. But yeah, I know.
Yeah, do you have a lot of clients come to you about intermittent fasting?
I feel like it kind of ebbs and flows depending on the
Okay.
season. Like sometimes, like I feel like sometimes I get an influx of clients dealing with a lot of one issue, then it kind of, changes to one area. So it's interesting how it does ebb and flow. So sometimes I feel like I get a lot of clients that are asking me about intermittent fasting or they're doing intermittent fasting. So we just kind of talk about like the pros and cons of it and like what's going to work for them.
Yeah.
So, I'm not against it. I think it's just taking that individualized approach. And if they like it, great. If you feel like you can wait until like 1 o'clock to eat and you really enjoy that and that does work better for you, cool. I could not do that because I have to eat as soon as I wake up. Otherwise, I'm not the nicest person in the world. But
Yeah, no,
it
me too.
definitely depends.
But I
Yeah.
think that's the problem, especially with like nutrition on the internet, is like people try to come up with just this one perfect solution, like just intermittent fasting. You're gonna lose weight, it's perfect for everyone. And then everyone tries to adopt this one thing, and it's like, okay, maybe that doesn't work for you, and that's okay. Like, especially right now, I've been seeing a lot of people hopping on the carnivore diet bandwagon. Have you been seeing that too?
Yes, yes. I think the carnivore diet is so trendy right now. What are your thoughts? We can have a good conversation about
Well,
this.
so I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this girl was like, "Yeah, I'm really trying to hone in on my nutrition, like blah blah blah." And she's like, "I'm starting the carnivore diet because vegetables just hurt my stomach, so I'm gonna cut out vegetables." And I was like, "Okay, well, that's a lot of vitamins and minerals that you're not gonna be getting." And then she started talking about how she's gonna do a parasite cleanse, and I was just like, "Okay, no, maybe let's not." I think that yes, eating whole foods can be super advantageous, but cutting out certain food groups like vegetables, you're going to be missing out on a lot of those vitamins and minerals that your body needs to function. So I personally don't agree with the carnivore diet, but
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Yeah, because I would say like, okay, if our stomach is hurting from eating fruits and vegetables, maybe it's too much fiber at once. Like maybe we
exactly,
need to work
yeah.
on chewing the food a little bit
Or
more,
your
slowing
gut
it down.
microbiota is just it's so down in the dumps that you need to be eating those things to get it back to being healthy.
Yeah, and I think it kind of comes down to like the all or nothing, and like nutrition is so much more nuanced and health is more nuanced than like the black or white. So I think like if we take like more of an all or nothing approach, like whether we're going carnivore, whether we're going totally plant-based or something, I don't think that we have to do either or. I think that we can, obviously enjoy animal-based foods and also incorporate our fruits and vegetables. And yeah, I think in terms of nutrient deficiencies, there are going to be certain nutrients that we need to get from plants, like vitamin
Yeah.
C, for example. And I think too, the nutrient deficiencies, it kind of takes a while to catch up. Like we may not notice them immediately. So I think people are saying like they feel really great on the carnivore diet, but then later on down the road they end up having some complications. Because like I don't know if you know about this, but Paul Saladino, the guy who created the carnivore diet. Do you know him?
Yeah.
So he like stopped doing the carnivore diet altogether. He started introducing more fruits, more veggies, and like honey, I think is what he introduced because he was having some health complications. So even the guy that created the carnivore diet is kind of adding in some more fruits and veggies again.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, like you said, like the all or nothing approach with everything, like, oh, intermittent fasting. Oh, like everyone's just going to the extremes. And I think it's just in human nature to like go to these extremes. Like, I mean, in every aspect of life, I mean, look at our like political system, like everything. Everyone just wants like a black and white answer when in reality, like, there's so much gray area that just complicates things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of like what also fueled my disordered eating. I went back and forth from like one extreme to the other. Like I'd be quote eating clean and then, like that would be so restrictive that I'd have to jump to the other like side of the spectrum. Yeah, and I think that's one reason I do love nutrition, and it's just because it is so nuanced and there's so much like back and forth, and that's what I always tell clients. Like if they ask me a question, I always tell them like, okay, my answer to everything you ask is probably going to be it depends,
Yeah.
because it depends on so many things, like you as a person, your lifestyle, what you want to do, if this is sustainable for you, so many different factors. It's yeah, so much more gray area than we realize.
Yeah, for sure. What have you found is like the hardest macronutrient that people are like struggling to hit? Like protein, carbs, fat,
I
or like
honestly,
under consuming? I'm gonna shut these blinds real fast because the sun is in
oh
my
yeah.
eyes, but I'm still listening.
Let's see here. I feel like it kinda, I would probably say protein, to be honest.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll say carbs, but I feel like that's lately been a little bit easier for clients. I think like what's hard about getting carbs in is a lot of clients don't understand that they can have carbs. So I think like once they're like I can have carbs, like I can eat these, then it's pretty easy for them to get. They just have to know that they can do it first. Protein, I feel like is hard because it's super satiating. So we do stay very full from eating a lot of protein. So I think sometimes that does make it harder to get more in. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say. I know some people don't have a hard time getting their protein in.
Me. But no, but what advice do you have for people to get in more protein throughout the day?
That's a great question. I think just considering, remembering that we're also going to get protein from those non-animal based sources too. So yeah, we can have like chicken and we can have fish at our plate, but also we're going to get some protein from the potatoes. So even like those starchy veggies, even some grains, we will get some protein from. So I think using those to our advantage, like the high protein oats, or, I'm trying to think like quinoa is going to have some protein. So adding those on our plate to contribute to that overall protein intake. And then if you want to, I mean, I always say, like these are not necessary, but if you want to add these in, like protein powder and supplementation can be great. Really, if you feel like it's hard to hit that overall protein goal.
Yeah, I think people do like have that misconception that like protein is only found in like meat and milk, like, and so they don't realize that there's even protein in vegetables. Like, even though it's a small amount, it's still like that can add up throughout the day. So like, I don't know. I feel like nowadays they're making more and more products with protein in them that makes it a little bit easier. And I know for me, like protein powder is also helpful, just like for after the gym, for being on the go. But I do notice that like the whey animal-based protein powders like did upset my stomach a lot. So going with like the more plant-based protein powders has been helpful for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one that I have been loving lately that we like keep on the rotation and my husband loves is just like throwing in edamame. Like whenever we do pizza nights, we do
Yeah.
like edamame, we just steam it, we add some sea salt. Like if we're going to a sushi restaurant, that's how they would, give it to us there.
Yeah.
But edamame, we get like 20 grams of protein per cup, which is
Right.
crazy and it always blows people's mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I am curious, what plant-based protein do you like to do?
I like the Truvani vanilla one is really good. And then they actually have a pumpkin spice one too that is out. That's limited edition right now.
Is that what you put in your Ninja Creamy with your pumpkin cheesecake?
So no, because I use a vanilla, the Slate. I think I've talked to you about them. They're like it's 20 grams of protein, 100 calories, and it's basically just like a milk. So I just use like the vanilla one of those, and then I mix it with pumpkin puree, and then sugar-free Jello mix, either vanilla or cheesecake, and then I will put pumpkin pie spice and a little bit of cinnamon, and then blend that, freeze it overnight, and then I'll add some of the Catalina Crunch pumpkin spice cereal to it, and it's really
Sounds
good.
so good, so
Yeah.
good. Another thing I was thinking with helping get protein up is like the ultra filtered milks have like 50% more protein than like a regular milk, so that's always good. Like I know Fairlife has a good one, and it has like 13 grams of protein as compared to like 8 grams. So that's
And it
another
tastes super
little
good too.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Good for people with sensitive tummies.
But yeah, I use the pumpkin spice Truvani to make muffins.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah, literally the other day, I just threw together a muffin recipe. Like, I didn't even follow a recipe because I couldn't find one I liked online. And I was like, I feel like this is not going to turn out. But it ended up turning out really well. I literally didn't measure anything. Like, I just threw ingredients into a bowl till it came the texture I liked, and then I just baked it.
So can you like remember the recipe for everyone
Yeah,
that's watching?
yeah. So, I think I talked about this on my last episode. But basically, I just did a can of pumpkin puree, 2 scoops of the pumpkin pie spice protein powder, one of the Chobani pumpkin spice yogurts, and then 2 eggs, a splash of almond milk, some vanilla, pumpkin pie spice, cinnamon, and some baking powder and baking soda. And then Lily's chocolate chips has a pumpkin chocolate chip, like it's like a pumpkin dark chocolate mixture, and they're really good. So I put those in there.
Okay, I feel like all of your like food science like lab is coming into play. Like
No, 100.
using all those different ingredients. I tried the Simple Mills like their mix of like the pumpkin muffins and like bread
yeah.
cookies, and that was so good. I really like that one. I think that's one of my favorites so far, but it's really expensive. But I was a big
I
fan.
know, that's the thing with some of those like boxed, especially like the healthier ones. I'm like, these are so expensive. It's like $10 for a box. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make it myself.
Yes. I was like, yeah, I could make it myself, but I'd rather just throw an egg in
No,
there and
those-
call it a day.
Yeah.
They
No,
were good.
it's
They
way
were good.
easier.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what do you typically recommend for supplements for most people due to like common nutrient deficiencies that kind of everyone needs help with?
Yeah, I would say like when it comes to supplementation, one like, supplements are kind of, in their name, they're designed to supplement our diet, so we don't necessarily
Yes.
need them. And I always recommend like getting blood work done beforehand to see what we are deficient in. But looking at blood work, I typically see like vitamin D is usually low, so that's one I like to supplement with if, blood work warrants that. And then research has found that most people are deficient in magnesium, and there's a lot of benefits to magnesium, so I do like to recommend that one. And then of course like a general multivitamin I think is good just to fill in the gaps, and if necessary a fish oil supplementation like omega-3s if someone doesn't consume a lot of fish, so we can get some of those anti-inflammatory benefits.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize like supplements are there as to supplement the diet. Like, yeah, for example, if people don't like fish and they're not going to consume that because they just don't like it, then that's a great thing to add, but it's not something that like everyone needs. I feel like a lot of people are take calcium because they think they need to be on calcium supplements when in reality they don't. But magnesium glycinate is a huge one. I take that every night before bed and it helps me sleep and just helps with my muscle recovery and everything. So yeah, I love that. And then what do you find is like the biggest barrier for clients in like changing their eating habits? Like the fact that they're not educated on stuff, they don't know how to cook, they don't like to cook, it's too expensive. Like,
That's
I
a
don't know.
really good question. Let's see here. I think that sometimes it's because maybe like the habits that we have been practicing are really, really ingrained in us, and it's hard to break those habits and practice new ones. So I would say that one's really challenging, like just trying to incorporate those newer habits because it might be something that we've never done before. And I think too, like making the time, because it does require like time for meal planning, meal prepping, if someone does want to meal prep, grocery shopping. So really trying to get creative with clients who have a really busy schedule, and that can definitely be a barrier. But I would say usually just because these are really new habits that they haven't worked on before.
Yeah. No, and I think it's really helpful to have someone kind of guide you through that, especially and just kind of like reassure yourself and like teach you new things that you didn't really know even existed. Like before I started getting into nutrition, I didn't know all of these ingredients and like how to cook or anything. Like I made pasta, like that was kind of it. But I feel like I know for me, like I like cooking, so it's different, but for some people that don't like to cook, kind of teaching them quicker ways that they can go about it or just simplifying it can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think also, especially with people who maybe they've tried vegetables in the past, they think they don't like vegetables, but really they just didn't like how the vegetables were cooked. Like maybe they grew
Exactly.
up just eating like, mushy veggies or veggies like maybe that didn't have a ton of seasoning. So then when we figure out, okay, hey, you can have like Brussels sprouts, but let's do like a yummy balsamic glaze on there. Or if we do salmon, like we can do a brown sugar glaze. So it doesn't have to be bland, doesn't have to be boring. So I think sometimes we need a little bit of that excitement too with food, just because, yeah, I think a lot of people maybe are used to eating not very tasty food or veggies.
Yeah, I know my mom growing up, like she the only vegetables she ate came from a can. Like it was like canned green beans, canned corn, like that was it. And like even my grandpa, he just recently has had heart struggles. Like he had a heart attack, so he's on a low sodium, like hypertension kind of DASH diet plan now, and so I've been helping them with that. But it's definitely taken introducing some new foods that he would never eat. He still will not eat any salad that's not with like crunchy romaine lettuce. Like if you put kale and arugula, he's like, "What are these leaves in front of me? I'm not touching those." Like my mom had them over for dinner the other night and she made like a apple kale like cranberry like salad with like homemade dressing and all of that, and he literally would not even take a bite. And my mom's like, just try it. Just try it."
It sounds so good. Arugula is one of my favorite greens.
Me too.
I love the bitter taste, especially when we throw in like some goat cheese or something.
Yeah.
I think it's so good.
Oh, I think it
And
had cheese on it too, yeah.
sounds amazing. My husband is a little bit of a picky eater. He's definitely gotten better, but like I remember whenever we first got married, he like wasn't used to the way that I was cooking yet, just because like it was, lots of greens, lots of, like fatty fish and everything, more chicken. So we've had a lot of conversations of him being like, "Hey, I am not used to eating this way." So we've definitely had to find like compromises along the way of like making veggies more exciting, or maybe adding in some more red meat, or just things that he likes are maybe more palatable.
Yeah, I think like adding something, this is what we talk about in our classes, like adding in variety, but also something that's familiar together. So it kind of, and I know like when you have kids and stuff, it's good to do that. Like when you're getting them to try new foods, like give them something they like and then pair it with something that's new. So then they're like more willing to try it. And I think a lot of like our eating habits stem from how we grew up. And like having a good role model, having a parents that have good relationship with food and introduce you to new foods, and that can play such a big role in like your relationship with food when you grow up. So,
100%. No, I think that's such a good point. Yeah, families are very influential when it comes to like our own relationship with food as adults. And it's so funny. My mom was over yesterday and we were talking about food and everything, and just like our own eating patterns, and she was saying how she's like, yeah, I'm so glad that I was able to hide my own like weird habits with food from you guys so that y'all can have, more normal relationships with food. Which like she has her relationship with food is fine. She's just like, she was a single mom, so she always just like
Yeah.
would not eat during the day because she didn't have time or didn't make the time, didn't know how important it was. And so now, like, as she's older, I always have to tell her, like, hey, you actually should be eating multiple meals a day. And she's like, oh, but I had my granola bar. I'm fine. I'm like, no, we need to get more food in. And she's, asking me, like, why is she constipated and everything, or just, like, having these other issues. And I'm like, because you eat maybe one meal a day. We need a little bit more food than that.
Yeah, no, that's how my grandma is. She literally will eat like an orange and then like wait until dinner. And I'm like, I'm like, are you not like starving right now? Like, I wake up every morning and I'm like starving.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, that's literally what wakes me up in the morning is I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to stay in bed, but I'm so hungry.
yeah,
I have to go make something.
yeah, no, literally. Like, and every couple hours I'm like, oh, definitely need to eat. Because if I don't eat, I am not fun to be around. Like, I am so hangry. And like when I was under eating last year, when I was just so busy, like constantly stressed out. It was the one thing I could control. I was not pleasant to be around, like at all. And I know that. Like I was stressed out all the time. I was so on edge all the time because I was so hungry. My
Yeah.
brain was not working.
No, I totally agree. Like, I remember my mom used to tell me, like, ask why I was so moody all the time. And it was just because I was hungry. Like, I just didn't
Yeah.
have enough food. But I'm definitely the person that always has the snacks. Like, anyone can ask me for a snack, and I always have something. Just because I know I cannot go more than a couple of hours without eating. And
No,
if we're on
yeah.
a road trip, if we are stuck in the middle of nowhere, I better have something to eat.
Yeah. Always being prepared. I have started doing that too. Luckily, we have a fridge and a freezer in the like building that all my classes are in this year. So like and we're just free to use it. So like all the nutrition students were always just like snacking in class. It's like completely normal. Like we all have our little maybe we made oats like I always bring like fresh fruit to class. We're all just snacking in the middle of class and like no one cares. But the other day I have a night class that's like 6:30 to 9 p.m. Yeah,
Oh
on
no.
Mondays. It's not fun. So I like brought a snack and I like took it out and started eating it and this girl next to me was like making fun of me for eating in class. And I was just like, girl, I don't care. Like I'm just still gonna eat my food. Like and then the next week she's sitting there and she's complaining about how hungry she is. And then she's like, I could just never eat in class. Like I could just never. I'm like,
What? Why not?
all right,
I
well,
had no
sorry.
shame in class
Same.
whatsoever.
Same. I was like, how can I learn and pay attention if I'm starving? Like, all I'm going to be thinking about is how hungry I am.
Yes, and I think that's another thing too that I think is so good to point out is like, okay, even if we don't have physical hunger, like we can have like mental hunger, and if we're having trouble focusing, that probably means that you're hungry. We need
Yeah,
to go get something to eat. So, yeah, I think yes, I have to have food every couple of hours. And it's so great, like with clients, sometimes like we'll meet on their lunch break or something, so they're eating, so then like we'll kind of like do a lunch session together where we both get to
that's
eat.
good. Yeah.
So it kind of, it definitely works out sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you eat while you're like at work with clients? Because
That's
that's,
honestly like I try to give myself like breaks, like maybe like 5 minutes between each client, and then I'll go like scarf down, a chopstick or
oh,
some
yeah,
fruit
those are
or
good on the
something like
go.
that. Yeah, the chopsticks are honestly my go-to. Like I always have
Yeah.
those in my bag. I feel like they should sponsor me at this point. But yeah, it's really just like running in the break room between clients, trying to get my food in.
Yeah, because I'm not a huge fan of protein bars. Like, I always like to have other things. Like, protein bars aren't, I don't know, I just don't think they're good.
Yeah,
Or they
okay.
upset my stomach.
Yes, yeah, especially with all the sugar alcohols, they're not well tolerated by some people.
No.
But no, I totally agree. I feel like protein bars used to be like my go-to, but now I'm
Same.
like, okay, like that'll be my last resort. Like it's just not because
Yeah,
am worried about it. It's just not what I prefer. Like I
exactly.
prefer to have like, I don't know, maybe cheese and fruit or I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, something else. But yeah, and they're expensive.
I know they're so expensive. when I used to buy, and especially to get like the good ingredient, like clean protein bars, I mean, they can be like $3 a bar. Like, that's crazy.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I could buy a ton of fruit or whatever for the amount that I'm spending on protein bars. So yeah, and I know it takes up time, but like I'll always just cut up a bunch of fruit or vegetables at the beginning of the week and like put it in containers so then I can just grab what I want, put it in a little container and go. So I'm not having to like chop it every single time. So that's been super helpful for me cuz like being in class all day, like I used to just be like, "Oh, I'll just wait till I get home to eat." But then the whole time in class, all I'm thinking about is how hungry I am. I'm like, "This is stupid."
Yeah,
Like,
and then whenever you get home, you just eat everything because you're so hungry.
yeah, and then I'm like, and then it takes time to make the food, so then you're even more angry. And then you're sitting in traffic on the way home, and then you're even more angry. Like,
Yeah. It's honestly, oh my gosh, I remember like whenever I would commute from, because like we live in Fort Worth, but I went to school like at TWU, so that's in Denton, so that was like 45 minutes with traffic. Like if there was no traffic, it'd be fine, like 30 minutes, whatever. But
yeah,
no, with traffic, it'd be so bad. I would be sitting on I-35 in rush hour, and I'm just so hungry. So
that's
I
miserable.
do not miss those days. Now I know how to prep ahead of time, but I love the tip about just like, making sure you've got like your fruits and your snacks prepped ahead of time because then we're more likely to go towards those foods. And then we also don't end up wasting the food that we spent so much money on because groceries are expensive.
Yeah, and I feel
So,
like a lot of people, like, the reason they don't pack food is because they're like, oh, if it's there, then I'm gonna eat it. Like, I don't trust myself. But it's like, I feel like people are surprised when you're full, you actually don't want food, and then you get hungry, and then you have it there, and it's great. But if you wait until and you just let yourself starve, and then you go home and you're starving, then you're gonna eat everything in the pantry because you just your body's sending you the signal that you ignored for so long that now it's just everything in sight. You're gonna eat it.
yeah, our bodies are so much smarter than we give them credit for too. Like I think, when we feel maybe like lack of control around a certain food or feel like we are like overeating or maybe even like having some binging tendencies, a lot of that does stem from just the restriction. So I think just addressing that part and just making sure we are nourishing our bodies, I think is, yeah, our bodies are definitely very trustworthy, a lot more than we give them credit for.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that was kind of all the topics I wanted to hit. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or advice that you have for anyone surrounding their relationship with food?
Ooh,
Final thoughts?
their relationship with food. Advice for that, I would just say like be nice to yourself and don't be judgmental. Like one thing I work on with a lot of clients is practicing like, hey, like let's get curious instead of let's be judgmental towards ourselves. So like if you are struggling in your relationship with food and like maybe there's specific foods that it is more than others, I think like getting curious about those, like maybe there's some underlying beliefs about those foods or something that you can definitely address. But I would say just be curious instead of shaming yourself and being judgmental. Be kind to yourself. I think a lot of us are really, really mean to ourselves. So if you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself because we are definitely our own worst critics when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. If you wouldn't say it to a person you love, you shouldn't say it to yourself because you should love yourself, and you would never talk to your friend that way, so you shouldn't be talking to yourself that way.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
and then what advice would you have for someone who has someone in their life that they kind of see as struggling with food or might be going down a dangerous path and they're concerned about them? Do you think they should go about confronting that issue, or do you think they even should?
That's such a hard one.
I know.
And yeah, that's a really tough situation to be in, and I think like hard conversations to have. I think if it's someone that maybe you're close to, like maybe let's say it's your best friend. Okay, if it was my best friend, I would 100% say something to her.
Yeah.
And I'd say, hey, I noticed that maybe this is going on. Like, how are you feeling about food right now? I think just like asking them, like, how are you doing with food? Like, how is this impacting your life? Sometimes I think it could take a while for them to recognize. I know, like, even though I had people pointing it out to me, I was very much like, oh no, food's fine. Like, I have a great relationship with food when, I was definitely struggling. So I think sometimes it can take a while to help them realize it, but sometimes I think like maybe they want someone to point out, like maybe they want someone to recognize. I would say for my own personal experience and own advice, I would say if it's someone you feel comfortable with having those hard conversations, because I think I think it's hard for people to recognize it. And I think if someone does recognize it, then that's great, because it's really normal for like those behaviors like disordered eating, red flags, to maybe go unnoticed, because they might be so normalized in our society as far as like, okay, if we're restricting, cool, you're so disciplined, that's great. Whereas like, hey, we might only have one friend who's concerned about our relationship with food. So I'm always advocating for, you know, calling that out and helping people, you know, figure out what that looks like to have a good relationship with food.
Yeah, I know for me, like struggling with over-exercise, it was really helpful. I wasn't definitely in denial about it, and it's hard because it's like people are telling you, wow, you're so disciplined, you go to the gym every morning, like, oh, that's so awesome. Like from an outside perspective, it can seem like it's great, but like the people who are really close to me, like when they did bring it up that they were concerned, at first it was definitely hard and you can kind of be in denial, but like I'm so thankful that they did bring that to my attention, because obviously deep down I knew, but I just didn't want to admit it to myself that what I was doing. So I think if it's someone you really care about, I think that in the long run they're going to be super thankful, and even though right off the bat they might get defensive, it's definitely worth it for their well-being to kind of bring up the situation in a kind way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like in those circumstances too, like you might be able to be that one like safe space for that person and be able to kind of check in on them or be more accountable, like, hey, did you take a rest day today?
Yeah.
Whereas like maybe they don't have that otherwise. So I think that's always, you know, a really great opportunity to have in a friend.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people, they might see a friend struggling, so they start like talking about it to other people, and then it's like it becomes like this gossip thing behind their back, when in reality it's better to just go to them and express your concerns instead of like being scared of how they're going to respond.
Yeah, 100%. No, I totally agree with that.
So yeah, okay. Thank you so much for coming on. This was such a good conversation. We could literally talk for hours, but this has already been a long episode. So I will let you go, and yeah, I will see you when I'm back in Texas.
Yes, no, this was so fun, Maci. Thanks for having me on. I would love to do another one with you, and we can
Yes.
talk all about the hot topics.
Maybe we can do like a more specialized episode into like just hormones, or like just yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes, I would love that. So
yes,
cool.
I know everyone's gonna love this episode. So thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you guys loved our conversation, and we will definitely be having Cassidy back on the pod in the future, so stay tuned for that. If you did enjoy today's episode, please leave a rating and review and share it with a friend. It just helps me so much. I love hearing your guys' feedback and helps the podcast grow, so I would really appreciate that. For more content, you can follow at myverbaljournal.let'schat on Instagram, and my personal Instagram at Maci Lee Jones. And then make sure to check out the show notes. I will link the book that we discussed in today's episode and Cassidy's contact information if you're interested in connecting with a registered dietitian. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Much love. Maci.